Yeah. So 你们好, welcome to Chinese class. 欢迎, 欢迎. And we're just going to go over a few Zoom tools. I mentioned a couple before I hit the record button. So we will use the chat settings a fair amount today. Oh, the other thing about the chat, it's now a little easier to tell, like if you're sending a message so everybody sees it. Usually that will probably be the best. If you need to get me a private message, I sometimes miss it in the midst of class. So you think about that. If you need to get me something like, I was really having a hard time understanding halfway through class, but I couldn't get you to slow down, send me that in an email. It's totally appropriate to tell me that after class. Ideally, stop me. And this is the big signal for that. So here's a fist, here's a slanted hand, and wham, like that. If you see somebody else on camera doing that, great, Heather. If you try it out, give it a little try, make it feel cozy, comfortable. So I think of this kind of like a head hits wall, but it is also, you may have seen in Kung Fu matches, this is the way you start. This is the sign of respect. And it's actually an icon on social media in Chinese settings. You'll see this as like, thanks, kind of like a hey, respect to you kind of thing. So it is really a thing, but it's also my little visual signal. So if you see someone do this, if you join in with them, that's great. I am also very happy you all have video and your face is nice and clear and some light. I do use your like how you look on camera a lot to kind of read, did they understand? Who wants to answer? How are we doing? Should I slow down? Should I add a new word? Are they really struggling? Maybe I should, stay with this word for a while. So I'm using your face to help me figure that out. And you can absolutely tell me things like use it like, exaggerate your emotions if you want. If you, let's see, there's this thing, face, oh, thumbs up, thumbs down on camera is helpful. If it feels uncomfortable to see yourself on camera, you can actually turn off the view that has you on camera displayed to you, but I can still see you and the rest of class could still see you. So that is an option if you want to try that. It's if you go with your mouse over your own video window, there's three little dots in a blue square that will show up, and it is called hide self view. So I've just gotten used to it. It's like I teach in the mirror. So I like actually use to like see like how far away am I from the edge. So I got used to it, but it is weird at first. Let's see. The other thing that you might want to try exploring is the view options. And this is moved. If you used to use Zoom, this is a different place, I think. Up in the top row, at least in mine, it says view, and then there's like a little 9 box block kind of thing. And I have you on gallery because what I like to see is everybody all at once. You might find that my screen gets too small for you then. You could do it so that you have speaker view and you see some people at the top small and then the big speaker, current speaker, me or whoever's talking on mic. Immersive, I would not suggest. Multi-speaker is a new one. And I think that lets you actually see everybody, and then the one speaking is bigger, but it doesn't like it's not quite the same as the speaker view. So that could be fun because it's kind of like in between gallery and speaker. Um, do you have questions about Zoom? Okay. And I see Elizabeth, you are Liz. You prefer Liz? Great.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. And I think there's one more person, but not present tonight. So this is one reason why we do the video. And then these will be available. I put them on YouTube, but I keep them unlisted. So you can't search and find it, but it makes it easier to share the link with the class. And so you can watch at your leisure. It stays up forever unless YouTube starts cracking down and saying you have a limit on how much you can, store. Let's see. The other thing, kind of before we really get going, just some like ideas for success. being online, I mentioned the thing about like I'll read like what I see on your camera. Being responsive to things is really, really helpful. Telling me if you need help. Looking for the clue of if somebody else turns off their mute button right here in the corner, you can go, oh, they might be about to talk. And so you can kind of judge when you want to speak next. Well, in a small group like this, I don't necessarily like demand raising your hand, but we might sometimes. I might indicate that, but sometimes just talking, even though you're still muted, is enough. And I'm getting pretty good at reading lips, so we can do it that way too. But in general, some of the things that I think help you with the language side of what we're doing here is to just engage with Chinese. So as we hear something, as we see something, you're really trying to make sense of it. You're listening, you're looking, and you're wanting to understand the message of what's happening in Chinese. And then to support the flow of Chinese, sometimes we do things like this where we're breaking into English. I try to remember to do this in general. Like if we need to pause class and clear something up, or like, oh, I'm trying this activity where we're doing this, this, this. Does that help? Does that make sense? And now we can continue. And generally speaking, in class, I'll speak in Chinese and then sometimes use some stuff on the whiteboard and I'll write that in pinyin, usually at the beginning, and then I'll put the English next to it. So like supporting the flow there, if this does sometimes, it doesn't usually happen, but if you're like someone that's just so curious about the way that the language works, hold those till the end of class. When I ask, like before we sign out, I invite questions that would be English questions that might have broken the flow of the communication, but there maybe something is bugging you or something you're just curious about. Totally ask then at the end, and then it doesn't affect the flow during the class. And then respond, and that could be this. Like, whoa. Sometimes somebody's been, a couple of you have been in class with me before. Did we do slow like this? Like slow? Maybe not really. Okay, because I sometimes forget, but you could absolutely tell me to slow down. This also sometimes means I'll go back and repeat more slowly, that kind of thing. So that is a type of response. Maybe it's a yes, no question, and I'm suggesting, is it a yes, no? You could do your thumbs up, thumbs down on screen, or you could use the fancy React versions of that. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Um, doesn't always work smoothly, but yeah, and then it stays up there for like 6 or 7 seconds there. It's gone. So any kind of response really helps me to gauge your comprehension. Nodding is great. Shaking your head is great. And especially at the very beginning, if this is your very first time being exposed to Chinese and you're like, well, how do I say yes and no? This is a good yes. This is a great no at the beginning. And as we go, you'll start to see how to use things that will be the equivalent. And then the give it a try is just, see how it goes. See how it goes. Try it out. Questions? Okay, here we go. Yeah, I think I'll leave this here. Okay. Uh, Oh, the other thing that sometimes will throw people is you don't have to repeat after me. So if I say something, even if I'm saying it quite slowly, it's so that you're like thinking about, oh, that sound means that. Ah, that sound means that. And you're going to be interpreting a sentence. Um, and then I'm looking for what a reasonable response might be. So it could just be like, yeah, okay. Or if there's a question, maybe a response to the question. So here we go. Oh, one addendum to that. If you are someone who really likes to try out the words, this is the beauty of being online. You can totally do that whenever you want. Just don't let it distract you from interpreting the meaning and understanding what's going on. Uh, 我 我 okay. In Chinese and in a lot of East Asia, actually, we point here to indicate ourself. A lot of times in the US or Western context, you point like to the top of your chest, kind of. We do it here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not really telling you my nose. Um, Although the word for self has the word nose in it. So it does really make sense. 我我是我是 I have a little gesture. 是我是我是老师老师我是老师嗯我是老师我是杜老师杜老师对呀对呀知道了嗯知道知道了啊杜老师我是杜老师杜老师嗯哼杜老师对呀杜老师我是老师你们你们 So here's my little gesture. 你们是老师吗？你们是老师吗？对呀。哦，Mariana，不是，不是，不是。If I just say is there, will you know that it's also am and are? It's all of those words. Okay. 不是，Mariana，不是，不是老师。对呀，不是老师。Mariana 不是老师。Lane，你你是老师吗？哦，不是。Lane 不是老师，Mariana 也不是老师。嗯，知道了，知道了。嗯，Lane 不是老师，Mariana 也不是老师，Kelly 你也不是老师，对吗？啊，对，好的，知道了。老师啊，Mariana 是不是老师？对的，不是老师。对呀，那 Kelly 也不是老师。对呀，Lane 不是老师，Heather 你是不是老师？And pause right there. I asked her a different question form, so let's try it in the chat. What am I asking Heather? We'll say it an equivalent in English in the chat. And then this is one of those times where I'll hold, like, don't hit enter yet, type your answer. But then when my hands disappear on screen, you can hit enter. So let's see what I say. I said, Heather, 你是不是老师？你是不是老师？Heather，你是不是老师？怎么样？你是不是老师？So type and give it a shot. 你是不是老师的？啊，对呀，太好的，太好的。你们知道，知道，你们知道了。对，yeah. So it's like there's a couple question forms in Chinese. So that's like the Hamlet, to be or not to be kind of question form. Yeah. 好的，Heather，你是不是老师啊？是啊，Heather 是老师。嗯，没有呀呀，Mariana 不是老师，Kelly 也不是，Lane 不是老师，可是 Heather 是 Heather 是老师。对呀，叮，对呀，他是老师。Liz，你也也是老师吗？哦，也是，Liz 也是老师。好的了，那我是老师吗？对对，对，在哪里？对对对，我我是老师，我是老师。对呀，所以 Diane 是老师，对的。哦，我是杜老师，杜老师。对呀，Heather 是杜老师吗？不，Heather 是 Danishenko 老师。对呀，我是杜老师，Heather 不是。嗯，对呀。哦，你好，Regina，Regina，看看啊，看，Mariana 不是老师，Kelly 不是老师，Lane 也不是老师。可是 Heather 和 Liz 和我是老师，Regina 你也是 老师，对不对？对呀，对呀，Regina 也是。哦，看有三个不是老师，有四个，是老师，很好啊，很好的。And I realized one other thing. This is a little timeout. I realized when Regina came on, Regina has a little bit of Chinese background, and so do a few others have taken some other classes. Some of you are totally new. So I'm aiming for you all. But if you hear a little bit that is a little past you, or you're like, wait a minute, that's a lot of words. I don't think I'm going to retain all that. If you're brand new, don't be alarmed by that. If you can follow the track of the conversation and understand, like, okay, they're talking about who's a teacher and these ones are and these ones aren't. That's enough for now. Not that, oh, I don't know if I could say those sentences. Don't worry about that. Some of those who have a little bit more experience might be more ready to be able to say things in sentences. So don't be anxious, like, don't compare yourself. You are where you are. You're in the right place. You're doing the right things if you're seeking to engage with the Chinese and respond. That you're doing fine. So when I talk to Regina, I'm like, oh, I could throw in a little bit. So yeah. 好了，好，那看，呃三个老师，对的，三个老师，四个，哦，不是老师，四个是老师，是老师的。好的，好，那看在那里啊，看看，那他they all sound the same, but they're written differently. Also, singular they is ta. 那他是谁？谁知道吗？哦，Mariana 不知道，Kelly 不知道，Regina 你知道吗？哦，Regina 她她是谁？
是读老师，
对，是我，她她是我，她是我。Mariana 看到了吗？看到了，对，是我，对，不是现在，不是现在，不是，是我，可是可是不是现在，哦，不是现在，嗯，不是，那样啊，是我，嗯，想象，他是谁？ I'll take answers in the chat. Yeah. 他是谁? You could answer in English, Chinese, and you can just answer at will because you'll have different ideas. 所以想象他是我呀，他不是我，他是谁呀？And you can hit enter if you come up with some things. 对的对，哦，他是杜老师的老师，对，你们知道了，他他是我的老师，对啊，so 我的 that little the thing just makes it my，我的老师，对，他是我的老师，他是你们的老师吗？不，不是，对的，不是你们的老师，他是我的老师，对，不是现在，不是现在，对的，以前，以前他是我的老师，哎呀，看我2002年，对呀，现在2026年，对呀。2002年，他是我，他是我的老师啊。那看啊，看，那我在哪里？你看到吗？对呀，看到了，是我，对的，是我，他是我，对呀，我的老师在哪里？在哪里？看吗？Kelly 看到了，对呀，Lynn 看到了，我的老师有这样吗？Do you want me to clear something up or do you have an idea? Oh, I think you might still be muted. There you go.
No, sorry. I didn't catch
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
last half.
yeah,
What
yeah. And I'm off the word board, so let me see here. What did I ask Lane? Oh, I know. I need a word appear thing that would help. Oh. I'm gonna put it right here. This is not gonna be like this. Oh, 嗯，I'm gonna put it right here. 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 嗯，I'm gonna put it right I have plans for part of this chart, so we're gonna keep that over there. Okay. Does that help? 看到了，看到了吗? Oop. That ma is like a question mark that you say. You just stick it at the end and poof, it's a question now. So you don't only do questions that way, but that's one way. 对的。Lane 看到了我的老师吗？看到了我的老师吗？他是我的老师吗？啊，不是，不是，不，他是我的老师吗？不是，也不是，他是不是我的老师？嗯，哦，Regina 说是，他是我的老师。对呀，Lane 对吗？他是他是我的老师，对吗？对呀，看看他是对对，他是我的老师呀。他是我的老师的 husband。对呀，他是我的老师。那他想象想象想象，他是谁？他是谁？在 chat，yeah，so you can do it in the chat。他是谁？And again, Chinese, English, all that works. 嗯，Kelly 知道，对，Regina 知道了，对的，对的。他是，哎，对，Lane 知道了，对，他是我的妈妈，她是我的妈妈。对，看到了吗？看到，like, do you see it? Can you tell? Yeah. 看到了吗？有一点，有一点，有一点。Liz 说，杜老师的妈妈，对呀，她是我妈妈，对呀，那不是现在，不是现在，是以前的，以前，well，现在她是我的妈妈，对呀，妈妈 didn't change，but but but 以前的二哦2002年，对的，以前的不是现在，现在2026年，对呀，不是现在的，对呀，看我的老师也也是 我妈妈的老师。We're going to try this sentence interpretation in the chat too. So we'll do this one as like hold your answer until the end and we'll check. So do this one again. Let's see. Yes. Ta. Did I say it that way? Did I start with ta? No, no, no. Okay. We'll start with ta. Ta 也是我妈 Oh, I think I scrap that. 我的老师，我啊，我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。At least in this photo, she was. 我的 So we'll get this sentence and then I'll do the countdown. 我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。啊，我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。好的，哎，知道了，知道了，对对对对，知道了，知道了，对呀，对，我的老师也是我妈妈的老师。嗯，对对对对，看看，他是我妈妈的麻将老师。是麻将，对呀，麻将啊，他是我的老师，他是我妈妈的麻将老师。对呀，好了，我我妈妈不知道麻将。对 she didn't really pick it up from this time, but it was fun. 对呀，还有啊，看看，那她是我妈妈，对的，以前，对啊，不是现在，不是现在，嗯，她是我妈妈，她是谁？想象，想象，她是谁？在 chat 那里可以啊，他都知道了。对哦，你们知道了，Lane 知道，Kelly 知道，Liz 知道，Mariana 知道。对了，对了，他是我爸爸，他是我爸爸，他是我妈妈，他是我爸爸，他们是我爸爸妈妈。爸爸妈妈. Oh, always baba mama in Chinese. Mama baba sounds really weird. It's like one of those things like you don't say talk tick, you say tick tock. It's like that. So everybody'd understand, but they'd be like, oh, that sounded weird, So baba mama, if you want to say parents that are a dad and a mom, that kind of parents. So 我的爸爸，我的妈妈，对呀，还有哦，对的，对对对对对对，就是啊，哦，还可以看一个，看一下啊，是我，对呀，她是我的妈妈，对呀，我的妈妈是我的老师， 我妈妈是我的老师吗？哦，Liz 不知道，不知道啊，一有一点，有一点，对呀，妈妈是老师，对呀，嗯，我的妈妈，有一点，有一点是我的老师，我妈妈是老师，她是 science 老师，
呃，
嗯，她是老师，对呀，我爸爸不是老师，哦，知道了啊，对，我的妈妈是老师，她是老师，现在是老师。对呀，有五个，一二三四五，五个老师，三个不是老师。是是，好的啊，那我们看一下，那怎么哦，有一点问题的。好的，那我妈妈是老师，可是她不是英国人。下看到了吗？还好吗？Is that big enough? Snatty. Here we go. Oh, that's 我的妈妈不是英国人，不是英国人，不是不是 London 人，不是 Bath 人，不是 Manchester 人，他不是，他不是，他不是英国人，他不是，他不是英国人。我，你们你们知道吗？你们知道吗？我是不是英国人？知道吗？哦，Regina 说不不，Mariana 不知道不知道。哦，我不是英国人啊，知道了知道了。Oh, Mariana 说，so Mariana says, if I do that, it's like words coming out of my mouth. So it's like I didn't write it up here yet, but it's to say or to give the opinion of by extension. So Mariana 说，我不是英国人。对了，对对，我不是英国人。对啊，我不是。我妈妈不是英国人，我爸爸也不是英国人，爸爸妈妈不是英国人。 我也不是。对呀，看我的老师。对呀，嗯，想象，想象，我的老师是英国人吗？嗯，Regina 说不是，Mariana 说不知道，不知道了，Liz 不知道，不知道了，哎，Heather 不知道了。对呀，对呀，You can't tell always，but 他不是，我的老师也不是英国人，不是英国人。对呀，那 Regina 是老师啊，看 Regina，她是老师，她是，可是。Regina 是不是英国人？你是英国人吗？对呀、哦，不是，不是。看 Regina 说不，对呀、Regina 不是英国人。好的，Liz，你也不是英国人吗？哦，也不是，也不是。Heather，你呢？你呢？Does that question make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Heather，你也不是英国人。对呀、Heather 不是英国人，Lane 是不是也不是，不是英国人。Kelly，你是英国人吗？也不是啊。Mariana 是英国人吗？也不是，不是英国人啊。我们，OK，so 你们 is you all. What do you think woman is? If you know, don't tell. Let's let the newbies think about it for a minute. So, um, Neiman's you all woman. New folks, you want to try it? What do you think woman is? If you would come on mic, I'll write while you say.
We
Yeah, nice. Yeah, woman. So it goes 我, woman, 你, 你们, 他, 他们 for they, plural. They. 对呀，所以我们不是英国人，看看，不是英国人，都不是英国人啊。那你们是啊，可以，你们是哪国人？看一下啊，你们是哪哪国人？Let's check this one in the chat too. What question am I asking? 你们是哪哪国人？What do you think that is? 你们是哪国人？Oh, I'll do the countdown. 你们是哪国人？ 们是哪国人？对呀，对呀，知道了。对呀，nationality could be like where you're from, what country are you from? Literally, which country person? It's a common one for hearing from Chinese people in China, especially. I heard it a lot. And it happens regardless of your race. I mean, Chinese people don't always perceive that Americans could be Asian by descent. And sometimes they forget that people who are like I was told I was not American because I had dark hair. Well, actually, they called my hair blonde, but I had dark eyes. It didn't match their preconceived idea. I'm like, you know about Michael Jordan, right? And like, and they did, but they didn't make the connections necessarily. So it's funny, you know, people are trying to mush things on. So what I will aim to do is give you an answer that we might not get to talk through quite as much, but can do in the future. So we'll kind of introduce that a little bit. So I'll give you mine. You know, 我不是英国人. 英国 is very handy to know because it's in the word for English language. So that'll be helpful in the future. 我是美国人。我是美国人。Yeah. 是美国. So this 国 part is like the word country. 我是美国人. Yeah. 你们呢？你们是哪国人？Mariana，你呢？
嗯，我是美国人。
啊，Mariana 是美国人。对
嗯
呀，No, I did that again.
嗯
Mariana 是美国人，她不是英国人。
嗯
不是，Mariana 也不是老师，不是英国人。可是她是美国人。对呀，对呀，对呀。Heather，你是美国人吗？啊，Heather 也是美国人。对呀，Lane，你呢？你呢？你是美国人吗？是啊，对啊，对对对对。Would you like the more complex answer?
What do you mean by complex answer?
Yeah, Lane told me, and maybe I shouldn't call this out, but she had shared something about her ancestry with me before in signing up for the class. And there is a way to say my ancestry is Chinese, but I am American. Would you like that one?
Sure.
Okay. 我是美籍，美籍韩国人，no，那个人，美籍韩人，美籍中国。Oh my gosh! Now I'm saying it, and I'm like, wait, how? Where you could say my nationality is U.S., but my ancestry is, so 美籍籍汉人，美籍中。Yeah. Oh my gosh! I want to double check this now. I'm like on the spur of the moment. I should have had this prepared in my mind. It's something that like it's unfortunate sometimes that people look and they try to assume. A lot of my Chinese American friends were told they were Korean, and they're like, "No, I'm American." And then it was very hard. So sometimes people in China don't always get it. So I'm giving these ideas as options. 美籍 Yeah, I let me double check. This is the nationality part though. Yeah. 我是美籍人. You could even say that too. Like I'm a person of US nationality. Like I'm a citizen of the States or I live in the US. 我是美籍人.是美国人 kind of suggests ancestry as well. 还有呢 Liz, 你呢？你不是英国人，你是哪国人？哦，在哪里？你是哪国人？
I don't know how to say 美国
哦，美国
嗯
人是美国人，对啊，
嗯
知道了，知道了，对啊，Kelly，我知道，Kelly 是美国人，对不对？
我美国人，
啊，对，Kelly 也是美国人。Regina，你呢？你是美国人吗？啊，我们都是，我们是美国人，我们不是英国人，我们是美国人，是美国人。知道了。I thought, oh, and I see it's right at time. At the end, I always stop and pause if you have questions about something that came up or about something random that you want to ask about. You are welcome to take a moment. And if somebody needs to sign off right away, you can too. So don't feel you have to stay.
So if I want to say to you that is your mom, would I say tada mama?
That would say his mom, her mom, or its
Oh,
mom.
then 你的 mama.
你的妈妈.
Okay.
Yeah. What else? 好，谢谢你们. Thanks for being here and being very engaged and willing to try it all out. So thanks very much. We'll build with this. I'll send you a link with the recording. And then after the next or maybe the second or third class, I'll have a reading video that will use some of the words that have come up a lot. And we'll go from there. So thanks.
谢谢。
再见。
谢谢。